Hey everyone, this video is meant to explain the rhetorical Twitter thread assignment, which is the focus for this week. So if you're not already on Twitter, or you would like for your Twitter feed to not be spoiled by this week's assignment, you'll need to create a new account on Twitter. You can use any email you'd like to do for that. Once you have your account, you'll need to familiarize yourself with Twitter if you haven't already done so. But essentially, you have up to 280 characters per tweet. So we are writing a rhetorical response, which typically we would do in an essay format, traditional paragraph standard format. But for this particular assignment, we're not doing that. We're writing it on Twitter, which in and of itself is a different rhetorical form, right? And so right there, we can discuss different things about audiences, the way that you respond and write things on Twitter. You will not be penalized for using shorthand or abbreviations or emojis or things like that in your response. In fact, that's probably more appropriate for Twitter than the standard academic style language that you would use in an essay. So you have to think about how you're going to respond and who your audience might be on Twitter. With that said, the point of this response is to do rhetorical analysis of the article that we've been working with by Clive Thompson on reading War and Peace on my iPhone. But I have to clarify and be very specific that with a rhetorical analysis, we don't necessarily want to recap or restate what he's saying in the article. We don't need to summarize the article, and it's not just a general response to the article. Rather, it's you're sort of picking it apart and you're doing a deeper dive into the things that he's talking about. And in fact, the textbook will help you significantly with doing this, chapters 1 and 3 in writing moves. But in particular, page 61, which asks very specific questions that I have listed here in bullet point format about the way that the essay is structured. How is he writing it? Is it significant even that he's writing this digitally and he's doing so on this website, right? When he's writing about print versus digital reading. Why do you think he's structuring it this way? So look at the way that it's structured physically, the form, the shape of his paragraphs, the hyperlinking that he's using, the imagery that he's invoking and including in his response. Follow those hyperlinks. What do they do? You have to consider one of the points that he makes in his article is the ability to go off track with these types of hyperlinks into different avenues when in fact reading something in print doesn't afford you that ability. So he's actually using these hyperlinks in this very article. So what does that say and what does that do? And then lastly, sort of what seems to be his stance. In other words, what does he conclude? And not necessarily how you feel about it, but this is a rhetorical analysis will focus on the author of this piece and his background, his views, the way that he's responding, the way that he's setting up this response. So again, stay away from summarizing and explaining what the piece is and what it's about, and instead you might have to go and do a little bit of background research on different things. So for example, you might want to look into statistics, some numbers and things on reader statistics, on number of print or ebook or digital sales, or polls that show whether or not people prefer to read things digitally or in print, or whether they take them equally as serious in digital and print sources. In fact, in the chapter 3, it is centered on Dana Boyd's piece where she's talking about these very things. So it is going to involve you needing to do some outside light research on these topics, because ultimately what you want to do is, as in the examples that I gave you in these links in the assignment, is do what these authors are doing on Twitter, which is picking apart and dissecting articles, supporting their views, supporting their ideas with statistics, other outside sources, evidence, inserting multimedia, hyperlinks, images, and things like that into their Twitter thread. In this case with Kevin Cruz, who's a masterful thread writer on Twitter, he takes an original tweet which has now been deleted, but it's really sort of, it doesn't really matter that it's been deleted, because what he's doing is he's dissecting it, he's deconstructing it, and he's actually enlightening the readers on a period in history that the original author, Jesse Kelly, had gotten wrong. Kevin Cruz is, by the way, he's expert at doing this. So you can look at some other examples of his Twitter threads where he's doing this and he's sort of correcting people from a historical perspective. But he usually will do so in lengthy thread form. So, getting back to your paper, in terms of the requirements, you need to have a minimum of 15 tweets, but it could go substantially longer than that. So that's just a bare minimum is 15 tweets. You'll want to number those tweets in some sequential way to do that. I give you an example here how to do that, but you'll need to label each tweet just as Kevin Cruz. Kevin Cruz often will do, or Oren Cass will do, numbering each tweet. It does need to have some multimedia in there. That's to help stimulate your response and provide that for the reader, but also it is utilizing the affordance of this medium using Twitter. It's welcoming multimedia in a number of ways, but you also have to consider, like, is the media necessary, or are you just throwing a picture in there just to throw a picture in there, right? It should be substantial and relevant. Respond to these questions that I have listed above and from the textbook. And again, I say in here, no errors in terms of your writing, but as I mentioned earlier, your writing style can absolutely take on a Twitter format, which is to say, I guess there's a difference between misspelling the words by the way, versus just using BTW, right? One is a stylistic choice in using BTW, and the other one is just a grammatical error in misspelling words, right? So you can use this Twitter abbreviated shorthand style because it's appropriate, but you'll want to try and cite your sources when possible, and you'll still want to try and develop thoughtful, coherent, I guess you can think of these tweets as mini paragraphs, right, with a point in each one of those paragraphs. So again, just to summarize, your rhetorical analysis, and you should read chapters 1 and 3 in the textbook just to familiarize yourself with the analysis, the rhetorical analysis. But to summarize, it's not a retelling of the article. It's not a response to the article from Clive Thompson. Rather, it's a deconstruction of the way that he's writing the article, the points that he's making, the structure, the form, his language. So this is the assignment mostly is a response to his rhetorical work. So if you have questions about this, feel free to reach out to me, but we're using this week to work on this assignment. Also, lastly, don't forget to include my Twitter handle in your response so that I'm alerted to see when you've posted your Twitter thread. All right, looking forward to reading these, and again, let me know if you have any questions.